The SEC West, it's interesting, isn't it? It's not Alabama in that defending championship position. It is LSU. The same LSU who had an over-under preseason win total in the 6 or 7 range last year. So even in the SEC West, yes, friends, anything could happen. So the first thing I need to ask you, as we do this little post-spring kind of examination of the SEC West, is what is Alabama? What is Alabama? Whomst is Alabama? What are we going to see from Alabama this year? You know, we've talked about this a lot. I think it bears repeating one more time. There is a talking point circulating the college football public ether that this team's down a little bit. The roster's down a little bit. Roster's not down, man. Quarterback room's down. The roster's not down. Out of the 6 highest ranked recruiting classes in history, Bama's got 3 of them on campus right now. That's what their team's made of. They've got talent elsewhere on par with anyone in the country. It's the quarterback room that could be an issue. Now, it also bears repeating, when Tyler Buckner transferred in there, no one transferred out. Make of that what you will. Anyway, I'm not here to tell you what you already know. I'm here to ask you, what is that team going to be this year? Like, my personal take on it is I'm kind of, in a way, morbidly excited about them having questions at the quarterback position. And it's not because that's a good thing overall for most teams, but for a team as talented as them, and a team that used to butter their bread in an entirely different style than just disproportionately leaning on quarterback, I'm excited to see them know several months ahead of time, we are not going to be able to lean on quarterback. We have to win playing defense. We may have to win running the ball. We may have to win a few games where we scored 24 points. I'm actually excited to watch that. Maybe I'm just a sicko, but I'm excited to watch that. But in that whole what is Alabama, there's always the rosy glass half full, or chalice half full, if you will. But let's go chalice half empty for a second. Let's just be full negatiters. What happens if they go 9-3 or 8-4, which is, it boggles the mind to even conceptualize that, but I've seen a few of those predictions out there. What happens if last year's close win turns into this year's loss, and last year's loss remains a loss? They certainly have teams on their schedule that pose a challenge. They have 4 of the top 13 odds favorites to make the playoff on this schedule here. And obviously, they play some of them on the road, play some of them at home. That's the way scheduling works. I cannot prepare myself, and nor can you prepare yourself adequately for the conversation if Bama were to not win double-digit games. That's a first-world problem, obviously, but I think it's in everyone's best interest down there. Just go ahead and make it back to Atlanta this year. But if they don't, that'll be its own segment, I can assure you of that. Meanwhile, down the road in Baton Rouge, another question we could ask is, has LSU just permanently ascended to the head table? That doesn't mean win the conference every year or even win the division every year, but you know what I mean. LSU was at the big boy table for a long time, to where you knew if Alabama's going to win the West, it's got to go through LSU. They're going to have something to say about it. They were always a tough out. Even when Bama was running off that string of wins against LSU, most of them were not blowouts. Most of them were not even, double-digit wins. They were really close, back and forth. So LSU just out of nowhere wins the division last year. It wasn't luck at all, although some people would call it that. I would just call it a faster-than-expected start, and the fact that Brian Kelly's a really, really good coach and understands how to structure a program the right way and has sustainability about that structure. So, for the doubters out there, I guess I ask the question, are they permanently at the head table? Because they're sitting here this year, and you open up that preview magazine season when it arrives in the mail in, a few weeks at this point, you're going to see them ranked inside the top 10. When they play Florida State in week 1 this year, it's going to be a highly, highly ranked matchup. That is 2 top 10 teams that a couple of years ago we weren't saying about either one of them. And so there they are. Brian Kelly, Mike Norvell, there they are. Well, I'm not a believer that college football needs any one team to be good to flourish. However, I am a believer that college football as a sport's kind of better when certain teams are good. LSU is one of them, selfishly, because I love LSU, and some of them even love me back. No, LSU treats us great. We may be down there soon. We'll see. So if LSU is at that head table, then you start to ask questions elsewhere. In fact, we can go to it right now because you've got overhauls going on at Texas A&M. You got overhauls going on at Arkansas. I mean, at A&M, it's pretty high profile. I don't think as many people have talked about Arkansas outside of this show. Not as many people have talked about Arkansas. But at A&M, you know they brought Petrino in, okay? Why did they do that? Obviously, they sucked water through a garden hose offensively last year. They were 101st points per game. They were 75th in explosive play rate. And honestly, I didn't know they were that highly ranked when it comes to explosive plays. They were 93rd in yards per game last year. Atrocious. And the talent in the cupboard's far better than those numbers. So Connor Wegman, think he'll start at quarterback? Great. I got good pieces around him. They've got guys that could be stars, like Evan Stewart could be a star out there. You've got to have the right offense to have him plugged into. So if Bobby Petrino comes in there and he truly is the magic elixir that just overhauls everything, wonderful. Is that going to happen? That's the great question that we get to ask ourselves for the next couple of months. But you kind of know about that. Like, that's the going question for everyone around the country when it comes to Texas A&M. But at Arkansas, I think maybe most people don't remember they're replacing both coordinators up there. And not only that, I mean, Pittman did a flush on a number of different compartments of his program. Strength and conditioning, overhauled. Nutrition, overhauled. Not to mention both of the coordinator spots, overhauled. Oh, and his roster, via the portal, overhauled. But what they didn't overhaul is the quarterback position. Now, there are different opinions out there on how good KJ Jefferson is. I happen to think they're far better with him than without him. Let me just make that bold proclamation here. So they were 56th out of 65 teams in Power 5 competition last year defensively. So it's got to be better. I mean, they had some injuries early in the year, obviously, but it's got to be better. So with that going on, okay, that's one kind of churn. Then you got the portal churn at places like Auburn and Ole Miss, which is just a fascinating story. So at Ole Miss, Lane Kiffin has, I think, as good as anyone in America dialed into what he can do and what he can't do. And realistically speaking, what he can't do is just go toe-to-toe on the high school recruiting trail with Georgia. That's not going to happen. But what he can do is he can get selective, and he can be really good selectively in NIL and keeping guys like Quinshon Judkins on campus. And then also he can go via the portal and replenish his roster. It's not an ideal world. It may not be long-term sustainable, but you got to worry about tomorrow before you can worry about 2027. And Lane Kiffin's doing that right now. So they needed wide receiver help. And it's been interesting there because there've been some guys that they've gone after, Coleman, the latest example, that ended up going to Florida State and they've missed on, but they're still in it for kids. And so this is going to be an experiment every year we're talking about with them. They're over-under win total 7.5, so we'll see with them. At Auburn, Hugh Freeze is killing it in the portal right now. In fact, you know what I'm going to do, Colin? Because they put us in their hype video the other day, and I appreciate that. I saw that, by the way. I'm going to wait for us to get an Auburn graphic on the screen because, look, there's a half-decent chance they use what I'm about to say. Here's how it works right here. Watch this. Hugh Freeze is killing it in the transfer portal. And cut. All right, you guys can use that part. Now let's talk for real. Hugh Freeze is killing it in the transfer portal, so that wasn't an act. He really is. They have brought in a ton of kids. They've got the number 3 class in the portal right now. They just brought in some more kids, and they've had, I think, 20 go out and 19 come in. It's either one way or the other. So a lot of kids have exited. A lot of kids have come in. They also got themselves a quarterback in Peyton Thorne. They've got some receiver help in the last couple of weeks. They have the number 18 recruiting class and number 3 transfer class. Hugh Freeze has given himself an opportunity, and he's given the Auburn Tigers an opportunity to be competitive in year one. They have, just for comparison's sake, they've brought in more 4-star players via the portal than any other team this cycle. That includes Colorado. That includes USC. That includes anyone. Auburn has brought in more 4-star or higher-rated talent via the portal this cycle than anyone else. That wasn't optional. That was a necessity, and Hugh Freeze got it done. And also, Mike Leach passed away at Mississippi State, and it dominated the headlines, as it should. And Zach Arnett took the reins as head coach there, the defensive coordinator. And because of what happened with Leach, and understandably so, there's been a hesitation to even start talking about Mississippi State on the field this coming year. Well, it's about time to start talking about that, all due respect. And do you guys understand there's a quarterback in the SEC that is already the leader in the history of the conference in completions? There's a quarterback that just passed Eli Manning for all-time SEC touchdown passes, and he's coming back this year. Like he has another year to play. That's Will Rogers at Mississippi State. Now, they're very content over there with no one talking about him. At least one show is going to talk about him because I'm sitting here and I know they got LSU and Bama in the first 5 weeks of the season and play them both at home. They go to South Carolina first 5 weeks of the season. They could aggravate a lot of people, to say the very least, in the first few weeks of the season. But it's a great unknown also because we don't even really know what to expect the team to look like because it goes from a Mike Leach philosophy to a defensive coordinator's philosophy as your new head coach. And so that's a great unknown over there. Mississippi State may have the worst odds in the SEC West. They got better odds than several teams over in the SEC East. It's just a deeper division. I've had a guy coming at me on Twitter over the past week saying, you still haven't explained what makes the West better than the East. I haven't. I don't think I need. Do I really need to? I don't think I need to.